Nuclear energy, there's fission and fusion. Fission is the breakdown of large atomic atoms, uranium, a few other things they might use, but it creates a great amount of friction by way of neutrons and other radioactive material flying around between the electrodes, and they heat up the water and again boil it, and turn it to steam. Well, I'm trying to say really the same thing with two electrodes to resonate upon the dielectric of water, not air, the dielectric of water. I built a Tesla coil, everything completely tunable, everything. From the primary flux on the secondary side, the spark gap, the inline inductance that I used into the primary, everything I did was with, well, I used parts from a junkyard in all honesty. I used from a driver's seat motor, from a Buick Century car, and how fitting that is, I believe, because it's a century that I am taking the ideas of Nikola Tesla and his induction coil, and the ideas of Albert Einstein himself in the theory of relativity, because that's where I derived this out of, from high voltage discharge, accelerating. These are all charged particles. They're neutral when they're put together, but yet they're composed of all charged particles. Subjugate it to a very large electric field, and they'll break down completely, and they're going to abide by this electric field. So, I'm talking about using electricity to create electricity. How do we do this? If we have a vessel, such as a nuclear power plant, already existing, this little simple tank can represent a vessel, a large vessel, where inside we have electrode systems, where we have a pure form of fuel, of water, containing hydrogen, with concentrations of heavy water itself. Other elements possible under iron, nickel 56 of the periodic table that we can add concentrations. But let us start with the premise in the beginning of what we need to do to have a lightning bolt to conduct in the dielectric of the fuel itself, water, to impinge, to make the oscillation and the driving force. First we will concede that by vast majority all the electrons will be stripped by this 1 billion volts peak to peak to oscillate back and forth. We know that within every electric discharge there is a magnetic field created. Think of the cathode ray scope in the back of a television. The older ones, these newer plasmas don't do this, but we can have a magnet and we will sense the magnetic field. Or you can take electricity, just push an electron or any charged particle and you will sense a magnetic field. 1 million volts. Follow with me on this. 1 million volts peak to peak. The electrons are stripped and they will be pushed and oscillated to go back and forth as a function of the applied voltage grid. We have to admit this. That's what the discharge current is. That's what my previous videos show. That's what any electric discharge will do. In that discharge, there will be a magnetic field. That is what I'm referring to in the magnetic field. In the oscillation of frequency, and the higher you go, in the understanding of skin effect and other phenomena associated with high frequency, there is more of a pinching and coupling of the quantum of the magnetic packet of energy. It's somewhat of a, it entails multiple ideas of de Broglie, quantum mechanics, other areas, but the point I'm trying to say to everyone here is that the hydrogen bound in this water molecule is what we're after, and if we can get it to combine into helium, there's an excess amount of energy comes out. If you put energy into this system, and if you can get excess energy out, it is absorbed by the entire surroundings, made to boil, made to make steam, and that's how you generate energy. So the byproducts of such a system would be hydrogen being slammed together by a magnetic pinch would make helium. The oxygen, which is left unbounded afterwards, is also a byproduct. So this system has hydrogen, helium, and oxygen as a byproduct. Extremely clean. I did this experiment on my own. I built all my Tesla coils tunable, and I did this for the first time last year on Palm Sunday, 2007, April Fool's Day also. A very interesting day, which I'll get into. But that experiment's never been done before, to actually try and take a device such as a Tesla coil, which can make a lightning bolt, the thing that you see in the sky, and made to not discharge in front of you like in a fancy magic show or wherever, you know, to have an electric discharge, but to do it upon water itself. But understanding that water is 2/3 hydrogen. It is hydrogen what the entire fusion community is after completely. And in this fission community, the opposite end of nuclear energy, which is no different than the coal or natural gas or whatever you're doing to boil water, to make steam, to make electricity, I am proposing every established nuclear fission power plant to listen to what I am saying. You have a spare reactor in your backyard somewhere at one of your plants. I am saying rip out the fission rod assemblies and put in a simple electrode system that I have done. The ideology that I have written in a 50-page paper and a PDF that I have in my website of noblefuse.org, and the experiment that I have performed to make everything tunable, in the words that I have written, in the ideology of what I am trying to say to accelerate charged particles, and really only looking at the hydrogen itself. For the oxygen is already O16. It's, for those who understand nuclear material, it is already a magic shell nuclear atom. The core, which is made up of 4 deuterons inside, you know, we can start with helium, which is a magic shell. Also deuteron, which is a hydrogen bound with a neutron, you have a deuteron. Put 2 of those together and you have helium. Put 4 more together and you have oxygen. They're very stable. But the hydrogen is not that. It's abundant by vast quantities, but it would actually like to build up into a deuteron or into helium. And it'll give you a bonus. It'll give you excess energy. It'll give you on the atomic scale. Burning coal, burning oil is chemical reaction, meaning that it's the electrons on the outside. It doesn't play with the nucleus whatsoever. I am referring to a minimum of 750,000 volts as a minimum electric field gradient. I find this in regards to the reverse beta decay of a free neutron. There's other ways I look at it, but if a free neutron could fall apart, it could come together. And fusion, just by way of knowing it for half a century, we know that some things do want to fuse. Under, again, nickel, iron, 56, that everything underneath this realm of the periodic table will do so. I am proposing the magnetic pinch ideology, proposed by Bennett since the 1950s. But more so than it, in regards to high voltage, that striking action that it impinges upon the charged particles is going to create a magnetic field. That magnetic field, you ever play with magnets? You got to pull to some parts of it, right? I'm talking about taking the hydrogens and slamming them together. By putting a high voltage discharge, by vast majority are electron current, without a shadow of a doubt, which will oscillate amidst these hydrogens. They won't be pushed as much because of their mass, but yet the electron current will oscillate, and it will have a magnetic field to it, and they will pinch. That's the magnetic pinch ideology. So I am speaking of high voltage to give it a magnetic field during its discharge. I am also referring to frequency. The higher the frequency, the better the envelope is squeezed. Higher frequency, higher rate of change of velocity in respect to time. This is again in regards to discharge of current. I wrote about this in my paper. I'm trying to spark in somebody's mind, somebody out there, that unlimited fuel is right in front of us. A clean byproduct is right in front of us. I don't care about business. I don't care about patents. I don't care about hiding this from anybody. I have been trying to tell this to everybody because I fundamentally understand energy is the key to civilization. Completely. Completely. If anybody doesn't understand that, they're not enlightened enough to know anything. Because truly enlightenment comes from stability by way of energy. The more energy a society has, the more stable you are, the more comfortable you may be to turn the lights on, to turn the heat on, to sit down at your house and